Good evening. Back in 1996, a young man came to Annapolis by way of employment at the Value City Department Store as a senior manager for that particular corporation. That individual found that upon arriving here, became very, very knowledgeable because of hiring individuals from the city of Annapolis, began to learn about individuals in the city of Annapolis, learned about where they lived, some of the issues and the problems that they were involved in. That same person met a young lady and decided rather than relocate to Prince George's County, from which he was from, decided to relocate here to the city of Annapolis and to live here, to set up home here. And that young man went through many years with Value City, became another form of management, left there, went to Toys R Us, became a manager, a troubleshooter with Toys R Us, left there, became an independent contractor with a national corporation for flooring here in the United States. It was during that time, in 2004, while serving a lead that was given to him, he met a young lady who was an alderwoman for the city of Annapolis. And he went to sell her some floors. Looked on her wall, saw all of these plaques, asked a question: how can one individual become mayor of the city of Annapolis? And she explained that the first thing that he should do is to run and become a member as an alderman. And so in 2005, that young man set out to become an alderman, was elected, and quite frankly, served the city very well, brought forth some legislation, left the city in order to serve a much larger group of people, and became employed with the county executive, found that his heart and his mind and his soul was here within the city, wanted to come back and serve in an elected position. Preparation has always been part of the program in all aspects of everything, even as an operations manager with Value City. It was all about preparation. When he was in the 6th grade, student government president. 12th grade, student government president. One of the first pages that for the county council in Prince George's County. Once he came here to Annapolis and he set up shop in Annapolis and realized that, guess what? This is where he wanted to be. This is where he wanted to serve. Why? Because in 1974 and 1975, when he got his license, this is where he spent a lot of his evenings, right on the docks. He drove up here, bought his dates up here, spent the evening in Annapolis. And so he realized that this is where he really wanted to be. And so he began to actually study, prepare in all aspects on this road to become mayor for the city of Annapolis. And so today, here we are, standing before you as a candidate for the mayoral of the city of Annapolis. Not one that just showed up, not one that has just been around and not been involved. Currently, I'm a consultant with the Anne Arundel Community Action Agency, have been involved in the community in all aspects of everything that was available and had to be done. This is not a part-time situation. This is something that's very real. This is something that we take very serious. And this is something in which we are truly focused on. We are driven by the aspect of serving individuals and serving people. We're driven by the fact that there has to be a difference. There can be a difference, and there will be a difference. We're driven by the fact that there was an article that was written in the Capitol 2 years ago, A Tale of Two Cities. And as that young man looked at that article and read that article, we realized that it's actually not that. That it's not a tale of two cities, but it's a tale of opportunities. And what we're driven to do as mayor is to make sure that everyone has the opportunity, that we bring forth and bring together the city of Annapolis in a way that will constitute one Annapolis, where we will be working together, driven for the total outcome of being recognized as the capital of the state of Maryland. Given that total recognition, not just for 90 days, but for 12 months and for 4 years. And if you see fit, after that third year, that young man has done a great job, we're going to ask you to re-elect him. I want to thank you very much, and I'm going to give way for 45 seconds.
I'm going to move around here. Good evening. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Sarah, and the District 30 Club for hosting this. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to have a conversation and share our views, for you to get to know us. I think everybody who's sitting at this table is running for mayor of Annapolis because they love this city. I don't think there's any question about that. I think there are a couple of things that separate me from the other candidates, and I'd like to share my thoughts about that with you.
What's your name?
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm Trudy McFall. Where was I?
Share what separates you.
Yes, thank you, thank you. There's two things, experience and change, and I want to discuss, if I might, with you, each of those with you. Let me start by telling you about my experience. I have 35 years of executive management experience in government and in business. I ran a regional agency in Minnesota. I ran a federal office in Washington, D.C., and 28 years ago, Governor Harry Hughes hired me to come to Maryland to run what is one of the larger agencies in Maryland, the Housing Finance Agency. That agency administers about $500 million, that's a billion with a B, $500 million a year to the state of Maryland. I stayed there 13 years. I worked for 2 governors. I was an appointee of the governor, and I lasted in that job longer than anyone before or since. It is a very challenging job in which you learn a great deal about how to administer effectively and how to bring people together. At my last year in that job, I was named the outstanding administrator, state administrator for the state of Maryland. Next, I really wanted to bring my passion for serving people to a more direct level, and I founded Homes for America. Homes for America is a nonprofit development entity. We're headquartered here in Annapolis, and we've developed several hundred units here in Annapolis, but we work in the mid-Atlantic states. And in the 15 years that I have led that organization, we are now one of the largest owners and developers of affordable housing in the country. This combination of executive management in government and sort of starting and grappling with the tough realities of running and managing a business, I think is a really ideal background for serving as mayor of Annapolis. The second thing I'd like to talk about for a moment is change. I'm sure all of these candidates and candidates from other parties, I think everyone this year will be talking about change. I think the voters want change, and we're going to have change. So change will be on our tongues. What I would like you to understand about me is that I have been active not just in talking about change, but leading for change. I have almost 3 decades of having lived in Annapolis and worked on a huge variety of both charitable and civic organizations in Annapolis. And some of it has been pretty tough stuff. I've tackled some of the toughest, hottest topics in this town, and I've stuck out my neck, and I have led and I have participated. A few years back, in recognition of this, I was named Anne Arundel County's Outstanding Volunteer for the year. I'd like to use the rest of my time to talk to you for a few minutes about the issues that I care about and the ones that I also have been very active in. I suspect these are also some issues we'll come back to in the question and answer period. City manager. I believe passionately that one of the great problems that the city has is that we do not have professional administrative direction of the city staff. And that so many of our problems stem from the failure to have that kind of administrative professional management. I have supported the city manager. I have participated in all the meetings, helped to craft both the bills that the council considered and are being considered by the voters in the referendum petition. I have been very active in the budget process. Painful as it is, I have been to every city council, and I or Dennis Conte have been to virtually every work session of the council on the budget. I understand what we have done with the budget this year, and it is of great concern. We are living beyond our means, and yet we are still not funding all of the essential services this year in the budget that we need to fund. But growth and development, I have been concerned about the comprehensive plan. I have spoken out vigorously on the scale and density in the comprehensive plan. As many of you know, I worked for 5 years as commissioner, the volunteer of the Public Housing Board of Commissioners. I'm very proud of the legacy that we have started to turn public housing from the relic of publicly owned and managed to privately owned. Thank you very much.
For those who can't read the name things up front, I just wanted to say the next speaker is Sam Shropshire, Alderman Sam Shropshire.
Thank you. A little bit about my background. Born in Charleston, South Carolina, not a native of Annapolis, but born in Charleston. My dad was a military pilot, working pilot for the Coast Guard, which was then part of the Navy. My father passed away when I was 3 months old, moved back to North Georgia, moved the family there, went back to South Carolina to high school, from there to college in New Jersey. After college, during college, I was hitchhiking or working in France for 4 summers and hitchhiking around Europe. It was in Czechoslovakia at that time that I met my wife, who was majoring in English and psychology. Jana and I were married in 1977. She came to the United States later that year, and we were both working with Evangelism Center International out of Glendale, California, working on behalf of persecuted Christians in Eastern Europe. After 6 years in California, I was employed by Christian Solidarity International out of Zurich, Switzerland, to found the U.S. branch of CSI USA. My responsibilities with CSI USA were to organize U.S. congressmen, especially within the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and the Senate Committee, working also various senators, to organize them into fact-finding trips into Eastern Europe, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. I travel with them to meet with foreign heads of state on behalf of Christians and Jews who had been imprisoned because of their religious activities. I got a good grasp of knowledge, working not only with the U.S. Congress, but with the Undersecretary of State for Human Rights, who was at that time Elliot Abrams, also working with the UN Commission on Human Rights, and also with various other non-profit, non-government organizations in Washington, D.C., networking on behalf of religious freedom and human rights. In 1987, I founded Love and Action, a faith-based group. Proudly organized the organization, began working with men who were living with AIDS. Most of them were hospitalized at the VA hospital in Washington, D.C. I trained Danny to work with me. Danny and I trained Joan. Danny and Joan and I trained Val. Pretty soon we were organizing volunteer training workshops at Fourth Presbyterian Church in Washington, D.C. The U.S. Senate chaplain was working with us in this project. The then president of the American Red Cross, Dick Schubert, was working with us. We, after 15 years, had trained 4,000 volunteers in all 50 states and we're also working in several Canadian provinces. The volunteers were trained to work in inpatient care, outpatient care, and HIV prevention education programs. I came to Annapolis in 1987 with Love and Action. The national office was founded here, and throughout the years grew to know the city. Got to know Josh Cohen at a East Port Rockin event, joined the Democratic Central Committee, was elected to the Democratic Central Committee, was chair of the Democratic Central Committee for 1 year, and later ran for alderman in 2005. Being on the city council has meant a lot to me. I've had a chance to affect 3 areas of our city, which I think are extremely important to the city of Annapolis. We have 3 major resources: people, water, and history. Our makeup, as far as the population goes, we have about 7% of the population living in public housing. Overwhelming majority of those are African American. Some of the children resident in public housing now are there for the 3rd and 4th generations. They have no vision to live outside public housing. I've been able to help churches organize within public housing to provide that vision and to also provide education in private schools for our public housing youth. It's said that 30% of our people in the city are living without health insurance. While the city council doesn't manage a health department, we need to lobby strongly within the state of Maryland to rectify these statistics. Many of these who are without health insurance are post-high school or college age, underemployed or unemployed. Others facing these circumstances of no health insurance are between the ages of 55 and 62. Water. Our Chesapeake Bay and our rivers are dying. 60% of the bay is said to be dead, and we've just received one of the poorest report cards on the quality of water for our rivers in the bay. We are the capital city. We should lead the way in improving the bay, and I've sponsored legislation within City Council that passed overwhelmingly to do just that. History plays a very important part as a resource to our city's economy. We cannot let the incredible gains made by Anne St. Clair Wright go to the wayside. We need to protect and preserve our history, and we need to do it with great enthusiasm. During this 2010 budget, I saw that we funded a salaried position for an inspector to work within the historic district. Thank you so much.
The next speaker is Gilbert Renaut.
Sorry, I think I've wasted some of my time just getting out of the chair. I'm Gilbert Renaut. I've lived here since 1975. I mostly grew up in Baltimore, though. I do have 17th century Maryland roots in St. Mary's County. But I'm not a native Annapolitan by a long shot. You probably know there are people who've been here since the 17th century, and their families anyway. I was for 30 years what's called in the books a trial lawyer general for the federal government, and that means I did litigation, more appellate work than trial work. Probably the highlight of my federal litigation career was winning judgment against Exxon for $2.1 billion, and Dan Rather actually said that very thing, that's billion with a B, on the nightly news after we got the judgment. This was during the period of price controls, you may remember. One of the interesting things that happened in the course of my government career is the government and the courts both decided that litigation was expensive and unpleasant, and even if you won, you went away unhappy. So more and more the government focused on mediation. And by the time I finished my government career, one of my niches was sensitive EEO cases. And by sensitive, I mean high-ranking people who had felt they'd been mistreated in one way or another. And it was important to the government to make these people happy and keep them doing their jobs because they were very high-level people. And one of the things that you quickly discover, if you've never seen an EEO trial, everybody walks away miserable. It's a horrible experience. But mediation, more often than not, produced a result where both sides went away feeling like they'd won, because what was over and over the case is that underlying the formalistic legal complaint was something more basic that had never been voiced. And if you get a mediator you trust and voice that complaint, it was almost always the case that you could find a solution that left everybody feeling better about it. That kind of became my specialty. After I retired, as some of you may remember, I ran for mayor and lost. I hope I learned a lot from that. One of the things I learned, interestingly enough, was walking in public housing. I heard the same thing over and over again, and I'm alluding a little bit to what has already been said about trying to make one Annapolis. What I heard over and over again was we never see anybody from the city except the police, and they're not there to help us. I think that's changing under the current police, but in any event, this is the moment, if there ever was one, to bring this city together. And what I would propose to do as mayor is use my mediation training. And by the way, since I was briefly on the the Anne Arundel Conflict Resolution Board, but I decided I didn't like the board. I wanted to be doing something, so I took what's called the 40-hour course. And now I'm authorized to be a court-appointed mediator. What I would propose to do as mayor is focus pretty much on three things. I think the key thing in order to change what the problem has been perceived to be is transparency, to start doing everything openly, getting input from people, genuinely listening to people, and not just being at the head of the city council chambers listening to testifiers, but actually walk the neighborhoods and talk to people. Go to the superintendent of schools and talk to him. Go to the county executive and talk to him. I think what we need, number one, is transparency, and number two is a lot more outreach. But ultimately, I think where the city has gone wrong over the years is we don't do much in the way of policy. There was I'm afraid it may have been, I think it was Henry Kissinger who made fun of Jimmy Carter by saying something like there's a big difference between conducting a policy and striking a pose. And I'm sorry it was Henry Kissinger that said it, but I think he was right. And I think that's pretty much one of the problems with the city, is that it never gets much beyond striking a pose. So what I would propose to do is have a transparent process with a lot more outreach to all our neighborhoods and all our interest groups and all our, what do they call them now? I can't think of the word, stakeholders. And putting together a real policy for everything, not just a knee-jerk thing where you're helping your friends or you're doing this because this is a good business and you're not going to do it over there because that's a bad business, but actually have a policy for everything. And what that policy should mostly do is keep Annapolis the wonderful place we think it is, and make it better to the maximum extent we can by bringing everybody together and listening to them. I, too, have a history of volunteerism. I was president of Ward 1. I was president of Murray Hill. I was president of the Community Associations of Annapolis. I was chairman of the Historic District Commission. I don't want to make myself sound like a lunatic, but this is a town that depends very heavily on volunteers. It wouldn't work if we didn't have them. I think I'm about to run out of time. I'll waive the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate is Zina Pierre.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, District 30, for your leadership in organizing this event. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize our chair of the Democratic Central Committee and the chair of the County Central Committee, Corey Blake and Nick Berry. So thank you again, and to all of my colleagues here at the dais. I'm third generation Annapolitan. My family is the Weems family. We've been in this city for a very, very long time. As entrepreneurs, as blue-collar workers, as government workers, and as volunteers over the years. Volunteerism is something that I've grown up and knowing and being a part of And it has always been first and second nature to me by virtue of my grandmother, Edna Weems, who taught us about the value of purpose and passion and compassion to those who are the least of these, but also to understand the importance of accountability and transparency and inclusivity. And so, why am I here and why am I doing this? 18 months ago, I began this trek. I sat and talked with Josh. I sat and talked with so many people in this city to really seek and find solutions as to what it means to be mayor of Annapolis if the opportunity presented itself. But more important, what are the issues that are important to you in Annapolis? I've talked to presidents of homeowners associations and looked at silting issues and stormwater runoff issues. I've gone to gas stations. I've sat in grocery stores and talked to people. I've been across this city. I've made my office at 49 West and at Starbucks like Trudy. We all have our little virtual offices. Josh is the only fortunate one here to have an office thus far. But one thing that I've heard over and over again, unequivocally, is that Annapolis is ready for a fresh start, that people are tired of the status quo. They're tired of business as usual. Businesses need a champion to support them and not be against them. And why am I doing this? I'm a business owner. I've managed a company for some years. I've worked in the federal government. I worked about 10 years in the television industry. And when I left the television industry, I started in the Clinton administration. I served all 8 years in the administration with my last position as Special Assistant to the President for Intergovernmental Affairs. And in that role, I was Clinton's liaison to mayors and county officials around the country, and I pushed the president's policy issues around the country. But not only did I do that, I was the ears and the voice for the mayors around the country to be able to show and tell all the great things that city governments and county governments are doing around the country. And so it provided for a bully pulpit for the mayors to begin to show and tell and showcase all the great things that are happening across this country. Now, we all know that we are in a situation where times have changed. The Annapolis of old is no longer here. The days of being able to walk in downtown and see a thriving market house, it doesn't exist right now. But I can guarantee you this: if you elect me as mayor, we will have the thriving market house that it once was. I want to focus on how we adapt business alliances, bring businesses together, bring organizations together, like the Annapolis Business Association, like the DAP, that Doug Smith and a group of people put together, like the sustainable businesses. And this should be Annapolis for Annapolis, buying local, supporting local. How do we bring foot traffic back down to Annapolis to begin to bring the vibrancy back to Annapolis the way that it once was? I don't know about you, but I remember Annapolis where Rookies was the best place to go and get cut meats and fresh breads and fresh seafood. And why can't we talk to Grawls and see if they're interested in bringing a satellite Grawls down to downtown to have a small satellite grocery store? Why can't we block off the road at certain hours on a Sunday, as we do now with the Market House on over there by the Fawcett building, and have the trucks line up as they once did in the 50s and sell their products? And so it's important that we find ways to partner. One of the things that I know that I can do is I can go after resources that are non-traditional resources. I do it now in my business that I started after leaving the White House. I started a lobbying firm called the Washington Linkage Group, and we continue to serve city governments like Baltimore and counties like Prince George's County and work with people like T. Boone Pickens to deal with alternative issues, energy solutions. I serve on the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center because it's important to me that we do look at ways to continue to be environmentally responsible. So I can't say all that I want to say in this 6 minutes, but I can tell you this. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and find ways to be inclusive, to be open, to be honest, to be fair. We have a lot to do in this city, Annapolis. I can't do it alone. And so I'm counting on you as we look at opportunities to do things to make a difference in this city. So thank you for your time.
The next candidate is County Council Member Josh Cohen.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Thank you all for being here and for giving all 6 of us the opportunity to share with you why we're running and what our vision is for the future of Annapolis. Everybody is in this room because we all care about the future of Annapolis. And elections are about choices. And the choice that every one of us will make this fall for mayor should be based on a couple different things. One of the things every voter should ask is which candidate for mayor has the right vision for Annapolis? Which mayor wants to take this city in a direction that I agree with? And the other question that people should ask is which is the candidate who can best get it done? Let me share with you some of my vision for Annapolis, and it's based on my experience growing up in Annapolis. I grew up in Murray Hill, in the house where my folks still live. When I was a kid, we wouldn't think twice about going and swimming in Spa Creek and not contracting some sort of waterborne illness. We would go down to College Creek to Chicken Neck for crabs, and you could literally drop the string in the water and see through the bottom because it was that clear, and not only could you see to the bottom, but there were crabs in College Creek. I would go downtown and buy model rockets at Hacks on Main Street. I would buy anatomically correct gingerbread cookies at the Gingerbread Man shop. I saw E.T. the Extraterrestrial at the Zirkle Theater. So obviously, a lot of those stores are no longer here, and the water quality in our creeks is not what it once was. But as we think about what our vision is for the future of Annapolis, for me, it really reflects some of the special qualities of the Annapolis I remember growing up. And that includes the water, it includes the sense of history downtown, and certainly includes the fact that we have defined neighborhoods that have character and are not just like some suburban community that you can find anywhere in Annapolis. And most of all, to me, when you add up the sum of the parts, what makes Annapolis so special is the sense of connection that we feel to our town and to each other as Annapolitans, because we are a town, we're a living town. And as we look to the future, and as all of us candidates talk about how we're going to address tough issues, like how do we revitalize the economy of downtown? How do we balance growth with preservation of neighborhood character? How do we tackle transportation challenges? As we talk about all of these issues that face Annapolis, whichever one of us is mayor is going to have a fundamental vision for what makes Annapolis special that's going to guide our decisions. And for me, it comes down to the fact that Annapolis is a special town. And as we grow, and as we try and rebuild our economy, we need to do so in a way that enhances the sense of connection that we feel. I know many of you, some of you I don't know, so let me just share briefly a little bit about myself. I was born only a few blocks from here in what was then the new wing of the old hospital on Franklin Street. My older brother was born in the old wing. My older sister was born in the middle wing. I was born in the new wing. When they built the new hospital on Jennifer Road, my parents said they were done, so my wife and I are doing our part. I went to Key School. I graduated from the University of Maryland, College Park, with a degree in economics. And I got involved in the trenches working on community issues. When I lived downtown, I served on the board of the Ward 1 Residents Association. When I moved to Eastport after college, I got involved and ended up serving on the board of the Eastport Civic Association. I helped found the Maritime Republic of Eastport, served as chairman of the Annapolis Democratic Central Committee, and I've worked in the trenches in public office, serving on the Annapolis City Council, representing the greater Annapolis area on the county council, and working successfully to tackle tough issues, such as how do we revise our zoning codes in a way that allows a responsible and reasonable use of one's property while still protecting the character of the neighborhood that we value. Pushing forward successful environmental legislation to limit development in environmentally sensitive critical areas. Working as chairman of the Finance Committee to do everything we can to support our police officers and firefighters, because the market for public safety personnel is a competitive market, just like it is with baseball teams. You want to attract the best talent. And Annapolis, when I was first elected to the city council, was woefully uncompetitive. And working with my colleagues in both parties, we were able to reduce the retirement age, implement retirement health care for retirees, and significantly increase pay so that we were competitive. I'm running for mayor most of all. As many of you know, I'm on the county council now, and I love my position there. I love serving with my colleagues on the council.